Today I want to talk a little bit about Novlr, which is a writing software that I found out about from a writing buddy of mine. She uses Novlr exclusively, and I've been using Scrivener for a little over a year now. I think I've been using Scrivener for about a year and a month or two. Actually, by now, probably almost about 15 months. I really like Scrivener, but I'm always looking for, what's out there that might be better. Is there something out there that might have a workflow that works out even better for me? Maybe Noveler is going to work out for you. So let's take a look at it, right? So the big picture is that Noveler is a non-linear web-based writing environment that bills via a subscription or a service model, which basically means that you don't just own a copy of Noveler outright. You don't get a perpetual license. You pay a monthly fee, or there's also an annual billing model, and you have access to the software and its features for as long as you pay that subscription. And then if you want to move away from Novlr or you stop paying that subscription for any reason, Novlr will deactivate the composing features. You'll still be able to export your writing out to a couple of different file formats, docx, ODT, and I believe PDF formats it'll all do, but you won't be able to keep on writing inside of Noveler, right? You have to keep on paying that subscription fee. And that's something that I've never really been into. I just like knowing what my costs are. And in the past, I've really shied away from any kind of software that is not going to work if I stop paying a subscription fee. That said, I think that Noveler has some interesting stuff going for it. I really like the way that its features are based around the psychology of writing. The makers of Noveler say that it's created by writers for writing, and I actually believe that. I think that the people who are developing Noveler, I believe that they are active writers. I'll show you some reasons why I believe that. And the last thing I would kind of say is I don't think Noveler is a complete one-stop shop for certain people. I think that it's really good for writing, but it isn't really meant to do final layout work. It's really meant for manuscript production. And again, I think that'll make sense once we take a look at the Noveler environment. Right. So let me show you this. Okay, so this is the Noveler environment. If you opened up Noveler, this is what you would see. What I have loaded here is just like all of this text down here. That is a test project that I've done. It's a pretty simple one. So one of the ways that I like to test new software, new writing software, is to do a writing prompt that I created for myself. I always start with this first line. I never actually thought Finn would die. And I just start writing, right? So the actual text here doesn't matter. This is just a way to let me generate some text fairly quickly, and I don't have to worry about getting boxed into this writing environment. I was a little bit concerned with Noveler on this, especially because it's a subscription model, and I kind of felt like, hey, do I want this writing that I'm like really invested in to live on Noveler forever? I've got to export it if I want to bring it to something that I'm going to use long term, and that's something I didn't want to get into. So I just did this test project. Now, when you look at the Noveler interface, you'll see that it's really, really minimal. And you open up the web page, you can bring up a dashboard, but interestingly enough, I found that once I started working on test projects, it didn't bring me back to the dashboard. It would actually put me straight into my writing project, which is pretty good in a lot of ways, right? Like if you just want to get into your writing, which is probably what you want to do, you want to have that come at you. I don't know if I actually like how sparse the interface is when I load it. I know that everybody's a little bit different about this. Some people really like a clean interface. Um, I grew up in a time when user interfaces were just a lot more busy, and I got used to that, and that's just kind of what I'm comfortable with. I'll be honest with you. All of this just like just words and everything, and I don't have any kind of like productivity tools or anything. It's a little bit sparse for me. It's I don't know, like it's a little bit like staring into the abyss. So I actually usually bring in the left bar and the right bar. Um, and then this is where you can see how the interface really starts to let you organize the document and navigate the document. So up here, I've got the title for my project, and then it shows me all of my chapters. And you can see with this indenting, you can create chapters as well as subchapters. So the subchapters can kind of be associated with the big chapter, and these can be reordered, which is what I mean when I say that Novlr is a non-linear writing environment. So I really like non-linear environments because, broadly speaking, there's two ways to write. You can either start at the beginning of your story or document or whatever you want to call it, and you can just like begin at the beginning and end at the end. That works for some people. Most of the writers I know like to be able to go around in their story, especially a bigger project like a novel, and work on some sections, go back, work on other ones. Maybe you get stuck on those, and then you want to go to something in like the distant future. And sometimes you even aren't completely sure how you want the novel to be structured because maybe you've got two concurrent storylines. So you've got an A story and a B story, and you don't know when you want to switch between those. That's when a nonlinear editor is going to really, really help you. So I can take all of this stuff and I can put it into any order I want, and I can drag and I can drop these and reorder them so that I change the linear order of the narrative. Um, and then that's just something that you can't really do as easily in something like Microsoft Word or Google Docs or other kind of writing environments that are really meant more for you to just like begin at the beginning and end at the end, right? If you want to make a new chapter, that's easy. You just hit this and then you can create one, or you can import it. And I like this as well because this kind of says that you can have some cross-functional compatibility. You can write in another kind of platform, then bring that into Novlr. I do like that. And there's a notes section, and here you can have things like outlines, or I really like to have character notes. Um, Especially as I've moved into bigger projects, I've found it more and more and more important to, just write everything down. Like, what's the backstory? What is this character's motivation? That's especially important when I have multiple novels in the pipe because if you walk away from a novel for like 2 months and you come back later, you're not going to remember everything that you were thinking. And in the moment, it feels crystal clear, but man, after 2 months, it is not so crystal clear anymore. So I really like having that note taking ability. It's not as robust as Scrivener. Scrivener will let you put anything into its notes. The notes can be infinitely nested. They're really, really, really robust. I can put images in there. I can take chapters and I can mark them for like as first drafts, as revised drafts, as final. Noveler is much more streamlined than that. Noveler is a little bit less geared towards production notes and really documenting that workflow. And it's really more about kind of a rough and ready, this is what you have. Um, on the plus side of that, the interface is cleaner. It's less intimidating. There's less little fiddly bits to get lost in, and in that way, I do think that Novlr has some potential to just keep people writing rather than worrying about all of those fiddly bits because those fiddly bits can be really helpful, but they can be distracting, right? You can abuse them and get so worked up in sort of doing all of like the ancillary work around writing that you're not actually doing the core writing. Um, Over on the right hand side, you can get to the dashboard, which will let you get to your other novels. I really like these color palettes. I keep mine on evening because it's the closest thing that mimics the old WordPerfect 5.1 writing environment, which had a blue background and white text. And I used that for years and years and years and years and years. Um, I love that program. It makes me a little bit nostalgic, so I like to use it. Um, so this is what the evening text looks like. I find it very comforting. Daytime is like super bright in comparison. It's just white. But maybe that's great. Maybe you like that. Night is pretty close to evening, so it's just like that black instead of, yeah. See, there we go. Sort of that more bluish. The focus mode works when you're writing. So what happens is, if you turn on focus mode while you type, after you type more than like a line or two, these menus will automatically retract. And so the only thing that you'll be looking at is the text, and that's supposed to be able to focus you into the text, and just keep you in that focused on writing mode to keep you in a writing flow. Like I said before, I don't really feel like I have a ton of problems with that myself. I have heard of people, and I've seen people commenting on writing fora and that kind of thing, that they do like the focus mode. So I'm glad it's there for people who want it. Personally, I think the Novlr interface is pretty slick. I think it's pretty clean. I don't feel the need to have that retract in. It kind of makes me feel a little bit too bare. And then you get some other little stuff like the paragraph indent that you can turn on and turn off, the curly quotes. Microsoft Office, I believe, calls this the smart quotes. It's just the quotation marks. You can change the font size. You can turn on or off your chapter numbers. Turning off the chapter numbers, just it just gets rid of these numbers here. So that's a really minor thing. And then here, it's interesting because this is not where you actually use these formatting effects. It's actually, if I highlight some text, it brings up this toolbar, and this just controls which options are in this toolbar. So you can make this toolbar very sparse. If desired. I mean, if you just know you are never going to use strike through, you just take it out. If you are 100% sure that you're never going to use bullet points, which I'll be honest, I don't know if I've ever written a novel that has bullet points in it. Yeah, just take them out and just have it like super clean. And that seems to me to be one of the themes of Novlr. That Novlr is really meant to be a clean, very simplistic. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say a minimalist writing environment, but it definitely skews that way. It's definitely not like super busy. You can even see that in the font size. So I can change this font size. Notice that you don't have an option to change the font itself. I do find this a little bit off-putting because I learned to write in Courier New, and that was just the standard. Everybody wrote in it. It's what I submitted manuscripts in for forever. I actually still do that. I don't always submit in Courier New. There are some fiction markets that would like a Times New Roman, and so obviously I just reformat that to whatever the editor is looking for. But when I'm drafting, I really like to look at Courier New. I just like a non-proportional serif font. And Courier New is the one I grew up with, so it's the one that I like to see. This just feels a little bit weird. Like it feels like, I don't know, like a little bit too modern. Overall, I like the Novlr aesthetic. I do think that it is it probably looks a little bit more friendly. It probably looks a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than something like Scrivener. I think Scrivener has like a really old looking user interface. Um, I know that that's one thing that the Scrivener people have been talking about, needing to upgrade and been working on as an upgrade. But I'll be honest, Scrivener at this point is really far behind in releasing Scrivener 3 for Windows. I believe it's already out for Mac devices, for Apple devices, but it's not out yet for the Windows platform. I don't know when it's going to be released. I'm looking forward to that update. But to be completely honest, with every passing month, Scrivener does feel a little bit older, and this is one thing that I do like about Novlr. Because Novlr is web-based, that brings out the service model billing because it doesn't really make sense to have people um, have like a one-time cost because the web-based model basically means they're changing the environment, and so you get all of the updates. Anything that they add to Novlr, you're automatically going to get. You don't even need to patch, right? The patching is all done on the back end. You just get kind of like this nice front end that has new features, but as a result, it doesn't really make sense to do a perpetual license. So it's a subscription. The the good news to that is Novlr does get updates. They have a roadmap, and I've looked at some of the features that are coming, and I do think some of the features that are coming out sound pretty good. I know that they are thinking about typewriter scrolling, which is something that I kind of like. Typewriter scrolling is where when you're typing, it'll keep that typing in the center of the screen, because if you're like a lot of people and you get to the bottom, you don't really like hanging out at the bottom of the screen, and so you scroll it up so that the place where you're writing is more in the midpoint of the page, right? And that just takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of work. And typewriter scrolling eliminates that, right? You could do that in Scrivener right now. Something I don't do a ton, but I like it. I like it when it's there. But the Novlr people realize that some people want it. They're working on that. So I can see how that subscription-based model, it kind of makes sense, right? I think another thing that I like about Novlr, but I do think is dangerous, is to go into the dashboard and you can see word counts, but you could also see daily progress. You can set goals, right? And this is where I really started to feel like Novlr has some stuff that some people might really, really want. And I could also see how it is by writers for writers, right? One of the things that I always talk about as being really, really important, maybe the most important thing in writing, is to just write. To get into a habit of writing, to have some discipline, and to not always write when we feel kind of like, taken by the muse and just inspired to write. A lot of writing is just discipline. A lot of writing is just having that commitment to the process to say, maybe writing isn't fun today. I'm going to do it anyway. And that's where a goal really comes in handy. And I noticed straight away that there are traditional goals like, however many hundreds of words per day. There's nothing wrong with these goals. But I think writing something every day, that that's something that writers want. I think that's a feature that says to me, yeah, there have been times in my life where I would have said, you know what, I don't even know if I can set myself a goal of 200 words a day, or if even if I did a custom number, that just that number is too intimidating. All I need to do is focus on just make myself write, and I have to trust the process and say, okay, once I start writing, I'll loosen up, I'll get into a flow, and I need to stop thinking about the numbers and just think about, am I writing? And I think a goal of something every day is just fantastic for that. And you've got monthly goals, which I think are also really good to have. You can see that there are word counts, there are streaks. I think that these are really good for being able to, again, like get into that psychology of writing. That, hey, I want to keep up my streak, so I'm gonna write today. If your writing software keeps you writing, if your writing software can motivate you to write, that's fantastic. That's something I think everybody should want. I think that word counts do it for a lot of people. I think a lot of people look at word counts and say, "Oh man, I hit 500 words today. That's fantastic. I really like that. I feel good about my writing. I feel good about that." And being able to say, "Oh, hey, I'm on track for this much writing this month." It can keep people writing, and the psychology of writing and thinking about like what makes us write and what stops us from writing is arguably as important, or honestly sometimes even more important than even like the technical or the technique parts of writing, where we're thinking like, well, wait a minute, how do I craft plot? Well, wait a minute, how do I develop characters? I mean, all of that stuff is really good, but then, if you've got these great characters and this complicated plot and all of this emotion, but it's all in your mind and you just never sit down to write, what good does it really do us? So I think these streaks and these goals, I think they can do a lot for writers. And I can see that being really, really powerful. It's one of the things that I think Novlr probably does the best. Um, that said, it's really dangerous because I've seen these goals go south, and I've seen people say, "Oh man, I set myself this goal. I wanted to write 500 words a day. I've been putting my time in at the computer. I never hit it. Oh, today I hit 238 words. Yesterday was a really bad day. I hit 57 words." Novlr has the potential to actually stifle people's writing, because when you don't hit those goals, if you get too anxious about that, if writers are feeling like, this makes me feel badly about writing because I'm not hitting my goals and I'm letting myself down and I'm getting disappointed and I'm demoralized, that can be a really dangerous thing. I have definitely seen writers who stop writing because they're not making their goals and they have to be able to set different goals for themselves. I think that's a real danger with Novlr, and it's not something that I think is going to be like a one size is gonna fit all. So I think Novlr is one of those tools that you really have to know yourself as a writer, and not just set your goals appropriately, but understand when those goals are not helping you and take those goals away and just say, I don't want to have a goal anymore, or change that goal strategically, or do whatever it is that you need to do to keep yourself in a positive workflow, right? The last thing that I want to say about Novlr is that um, it's not, I think, a fantastic writing environment for everybody who wants to do self publication and have a writing environment that's going to take them from, writing first words all the way to like publishing an ebook. Um, Doing the composition in that is fine. You could probably pair Novlr with something else, something like um, Google Docs or Microsoft Word. But I don't know if I super like Novlr because it doesn't handle graphics. So if you want to do anything with like illustration, Novlr is not really going to do that. That could limit some people who want to work inside of children's literature, maybe certain kinds of YA literature where you would want to have an illustration. If you have to do anything where characters are going to need like graphs, tables, like other kind of stuff. If you just need to like replicate like the alien glyphs, that have to be translated, something like that. Novlr is not going to be terribly good for that. I think Novlr seems to me to be implicitly designed for that writer who is making a manuscript that is going to be sent to a publisher who will do all of that layout work. There's just a lot of layout stuff that is just simply not present in Noveler. Even relatively simple stuff like creating headers or footers, it doesn't really have a place in Noveler. As a result, Noveler is also not really a great writing environment if you are a person who wants just like one place to do everything in life. So if you want to be able to write, do like more like technical writing, I probably would not recommend Noveler. If you really want to stay in one writing environment for everything in life, Noveler feels to me like what's on the name, right? It's Noveler. It's not like technical reporter. It's not like it's just not that kind of software. Um, Having used Noveler for a few weeks now, and writing a bit with it, I do feel pretty good about it. I think that the interface is pretty good for what it does. I'll be honest, I could actually imagine myself using Noveler as my daily writing environment. I think that the look of it is pretty good. I do wish that I could change this to Courier New. Um, I also wish that it had a standalone app. There is an offline mode. So, if you're worried, oh, hey, if I lose internet access, what happens? Noveler could go into an offline mode where it stores everything that you write and then it syncs itself up once you get access to the internet again. So it's kind of multi-platform in that way. You can access it on your tablet, on your phone. I think those are really, really good things to be able to do. I do wish, though, that it still had a desktop standalone app because down in my taskbar, right, like you can see, like I don't have an icon that's just for Noveler. I just have one for Chrome because that's what I use for my browser, and so it gets lost really easily. If I want Scrivener, I just come to Scrivener. I know that it's there when I can do my research in Chrome. I can be looking stuff up on the web, and then when I want to go into my writing, I know exactly where to click. It's super, super fast. It's super, super easy. I can't do that with Noveler. So I think releasing a standalone app would be really, really important for me. And I think that's maybe like the biggest thing for me right now that would prevent me from using Noveler as my primary writing software. Um, Otherwise, I really do think it's good. As I said at the very beginning, I tend to stay away from subscription-based models. I don't like them. I'm not completely thrilled with Noveler. It's not super expensive, $10 a month. If you use annual billing, it's more like $8 a month, but you pay by the year. I think that that's a fair price. So it's really not the money. It's just like the psychology of it for me that I don't know what it is about me, but I just rebel against that idea of I'm going to be paying for this for the rest of my life. And I think that the thing that takes the edge off of that is I get concerned about that because I see a lot of softwares with that subscription model where I get the updates, but I don't feel like I get a whole lot of use out of the updates. Like I kind of feel like this about Microsoft Office. I don't think I need every single version of Microsoft Office that comes out. Like when I skip a version or two and I come back to it every maybe like 5 years. Or 6 years, then I think like, oh, okay, there's some new functionality. That's not bad. I'm willing to pay for that. But I just don't feel like I want to subscribe to Microsoft Office because I don't know that every year I'm feeling like, oh man, like this was so much better than it was in 2019. So glad. Um, but the the Novlr software seems to get updates um, reasonably frequently. The fact that they publish a roadmap, so you can kind of see that some updates are coming, and you can decide whether or not you want them. And you can also pause your subscription, right? If you can say, okay, well, I'm not going to be writing that much, like this winter because I'm really busy with work or something, and you can take a few months off of Novlr if you're paying month to month, and you can come back to it later, and maybe like there's a feature that you want that's released, and you've got more time, so you don't necessarily have to pay for the months where you just know you're not going to be doing a whole lot of writing. It takes the edge off. I would say that all of that stuff is basically within the realm of imagination for me. I could imagine myself paying a subscription for Novlr and using it pretty happily um, until something even better came along. I mean, there's always going to be some little things that you wish that your writing environment can do. Scrivener has lots of things that I wish it could do. Novlr has some other things that I think are pretty small things, but I do kind of wish that Novlr did. It exports in ODT, PDF, and DocX, and that's great. I don't know why. I'm just kind of stickler about this. I would really like it if it could export an RTF, and I don't know why I feel so strongly about RTFs, but I wish that it did that. Maybe if that wouldn't be a deal breaker for me. But just these little things I think are always going to be there. Ultimately, you want to choose your writing software by asking, like, does it do the big important things that this wants me to do? And I think that if I were a writer who were really motivated by that reward of it saying, like, you know longest streak ever, or like you met your goal today, and if that just like filled me with pride, and it made me want to write, and it made me look forward to writing the next day, 100% I would use Novlr. Yeah, 100%. I definitely think that there are writers out there who will write more because of those streak features, and because of those word count features. And for all of you, I really hope you give Novlr a try. It does have a free trial. So if you think that Novlr is right for you, and you think that you're going to be really motivated, go ahead, give it a whirl. And I really hope you write a lot.